tidal power. Undersea turbines, which produce electricity from the tides, are set to become an important source of renewable energy for Britain. It is still too early to predict the extent of the impact they may have, but all the signs are that they will play a significant role in the future, operating on the same principle as wind turbines. The power in sea turbines comes from tidal currents, which turns blades similar to the ship's propellers. But unlike wind, the tidals are predictable and the power input is constant. The technology raises the prospects of Britain becoming self-sufficient in renewable energy and drastically reducing its carbon dioxide emissions. If tide, wind, and wave power are all developed, Britain would be able to close gas, coal, and nuclear power plants and export renewable power to other parts of Europe. Unlike wind power, which Britain originally developed and then abandoned for 20 years, allowing the Dutch to make it a major industry, undersea turbines could become a big export earner to island nations such as Japan and New Zealand. Tidal sites have already been identified that will produce 1/6 or more of the UK's power and as price competitive with modern gas turbines and undercutting those of already aligned nuclear industry. One site alone, the Pentland Firth between Orkney and mainland Scotland could produce 10% of the country's electricity with banks of turbines under the sea, and another as ordinarily in the Channel Islands 3 times than 1,200 megawatts of Britain's largest and newest nuclear plants. These will be in Suffolk. Other sites identified include the Bristol Channel and the west coast of Scotland, particularly the channel between Campbellton and Northern Ireland. Work on design for the new turbine blades and the sites are well advanced at the University of Southampton Sustainable Energy Research Group. Their first station is expected to be installed off Lumsden in Darwin shortly to test the technology in the venture jointly funded by the Department of Trade and Industry and the European Union, embarked by him in charge of the Scotland research, said the prospects for energy from tidal currents are far better than from wind because the flows of water are predictable and constant. The technology for dealing with the hostile saline environment under the sea has been developed in the North Sea oil industry and much. It's already known as a turbine blade design because of wind power and ship propellers. There are few technical difficulties, but I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, we will be installing commercial marine turbine farms. Southampton has been aware 215,000 over 3 years to develop the turbines and is working with marine current turbines and a subsidiary of ID Power on the projects. EU research has now identified 106 potential sites for tidal power. At present, around the coast of Britain, the best sites are between islands or around heavily indented coast, where there are strong tidal currents. A marine turbine blade needs to be only 1/3 of the size of the wind generator to produce 3 times as much power. The blades will be about 20 meters in diameter, so around 30 meters of water is required. Unlike wind power, there are likely to be environmental objections. Fish and other creatures are thought unlikely to be at risk from the relatively slow-turning blades. Each turbine will be mounted on the tower, which will connect to the national power supply grid via underwater cables. The towers will stick out of the water and be linked to on shipping, and also be designed and to be lifted out of the water for maintenance and to clean a seed from the blades. Dr. Bahe has done most work on the site where there are powerful currents. The single undersea turbine farm would produce far more power than needed for the Channel Islands, and most would be fed into the French grid and be re-imported into Britain via the cable under the channel. One technical difficulty is cavitation, where no pressure behind a turning blade causes air bubbles. This can cause a vibration and damage the blades of the turbines. And Dr. Bahai said we have to test a number of blade types to avoid this happening, or at least make sure it does not damage the turbines or reduce performance. Another slight concern is submerged debris floating into the blades. So far, we do not know how much of the problem it must be. We will have to make the turbines robust because the sea is a hostile environment, but all the signs that we can do are good. Information theory, the big idea. Information theory lies at the heart of everything from DVD players and the genetic code of DNA to the physics of the universe. As its most fundamental, it has been essential to the development of the science of communication, which enables data to be sent electronically and has therefore had a major impact on our lives. In April 2002, an event took place which demonstrated one of the many applications of information theory. The space probe Voyager 1, launched in 1977, had sent back spectacular images of Jupiter and Saturn, and then soared out of the solar system on the one-way mission to the stars. After 25 years of exposure to the freezing temperatures of deep space, the probe was beginning to show its age. Sensors and circuits were on the brink of falling, and NASA experts realized that they had to do something or lose contact with the probe forever. The solution was to get a message to Voyager 1 to instruct it to use spares to change their falling path with the probe 12 billion kilometers from Earth. This was not an easy task. By means of the radio dish belonging to NASA Deep Space Network, the message was sent out into the depths of space. Even traveling at the speed of light, it took over 11 hours to reach the target, far beyond our orbit or plateau. Yes, incredibly, the little probe managed to hear the faint call from its home planet, and successfully made the switch over. It was the longest distance repair job in history and a triumph for the last engineers, but it also highlighted the astonishing power of the techniques developed by American communications engineer Clyde Shannon, who had died just a year earlier. Born in 1916 in Petoskey, Michigan, Shannon showed an earlier talent for math and for building gadgets, and made made breakthroughs in the foundations of computer technology when still a student. Whereas bio-laboratories, Shannon's developed information theory, but shunned the resulting acclaim. In the 1940s, he single-handed created an entire science of communication, which has since invited its way into a host of applications, from DVDs to satellite communications to barcodes. Any area, in short, where data has to be conveyed rapidly yet accurately. This all seems light years away from the down-to-earth use Shannon originally had for his work, which began when he was a 22 years old graduate engineering student at the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1939. He sets out with an apparently simple aim to pin down the precise meaning of the concepts of information. The most basic form of information, some argued, is whether something is true or false, which can be captured in the binary unit or bit of the form 1 or 0, having identified its fundamental unit. Shannon says about defining in otherwise vague ideas about information and how to transmit it from place to place. In the process, he discovered something surprising. It is always possible to guarantee information will get through random interference. Noise interacts. Noise usually means unwanted sounds which interfere with genuine information. Information theory generalize this idea via theorems that capture the effects of noise with mathematical precision. In particular, Simmons showed that noise sets a limit on the rates at which information can pass along communication channels while remaining error-free. This rate depends on the relative strength of the signal and the noise traveling down the communication channel and on its capacity, its bandwidth. The resulting limits given in units of bits per second is the absolute maximum rate of error-free communication given in signal strength and noise level. The trick Shannon showed is to find ways of packing up coding information to cope with the ravages of noise while dealing with the information carrying capacity bandwidth of the communication system being used. Over the years, scientists have devised many such coding methods, and they have proved crucial in many technological feats. The Voyager spacecraft transmitted data using codes which added 1 extra bit for every single bit of information. The result was an error rate of just 1 bit in 10,000, and a stunningly clear picture of the planet. Other codes have become part of everyday life, such as the universal product code or barcode, which uses a simple error detecting system that ensures supermarkets or checkout leaders can read the price even on, say, a cramped bag of crisps. As recently as 1993, engineers made a major breakthrough by discovering so-called turbo codes, which can very close to Shannon's ultimate limits for the maximum rates that data can be transmitted reliably, and now play a key role in the mobile video phone revolution. Shannon also laid the foundations of more efficient ways of storing information by stripping out superfluous, redundant bits from data which contributed little real information, as a mobile phone, a text message like "I can see you" show it is often possible to leave us a lot of data without losing much meaning, which with error correction. However, there's limits beyond which message become too ambiguous. Sherman showed how to calculate these limits, opening the way to the design of compression methods that cram maximum information into the minimal space. Life and work of Marie Curie. Marie Curie is probably the most famous woman scientist who has ever lived. Born Marszałkowska in Poland in 1867, she is famous for her work on radioactivity and was twice a winner of the Nobel Prize with her husband, and she was awarded the 1903 Nobel Prize for Physics and was then a winner of the 1911 Nobel Prize for Chemistry. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. From childhood, Marie was remarkable for her prodigious memory, and at the age of 16, won a gold medal on competition of her secondary education because her father lost his savings through bad investments. She then had to take a work as a teacher. From her earnings, she was able to finance her sister Brownie's medical students in Paris, on the understanding that Brownie's would, in turn, lead her to get an education. In 1891, this promise were fulfilled, and Marie went to Paris and began to study at the Sorbonne in the University of Paris. She often worked far into the night and lived on little more than bread and butter at tea. She came first in the examination in the physical science in 1893, and in 1894 was placed second in the examination in mathematical sciences. It was not until the spring of that year that she was introduced to their marriage in 1895 marked the start of a partnership that was soon to achieve results of world significance. Following her discovery in 1896 of a new phenomenon, which Marie later called radioactivity, Marie Curie decided to find out if the radioactivity discovered in uranium was to be found in other elements. She discovered that these were true for thorium. Turning her attention to minerals, she found her interest drawn to pitch blend, a mineral whose radioactivity superior to that of pure uranium could be explained only by the presence in the aura of small quantities of an unknown substance of very high activity. Marie Curie joined her work in the work that she had undertaken to resolve this problem, and that led to the discovery of the new elements. Polonium and radium were Curie devoted himself chiefly to the physical study of the new radiation. When Marie Curie struggled to obtain pure radium in the metallic states, this was achieved with the help of the chemist, one of Curie's pupils. Based on the results of this research, Marie Curie received her doctorate of science, and in 1903, Marie and the prize shared with Banker the Nobel Prize for Physics for the discovery of radioactivity, the birth of Marion's two daughters, Erin and Eve, in 1897 and 1904 failed to interrupt her scientific work. She was appointed lecturer in the physics at the Loma for girls in France in 1900 and introduced the method of teaching based on experiments demonstrations. In December 1904, she was appointed as chief assistant in the laboratory directed by Pierre Cruz. The sudden death of her husband in 1906 was a bitter blow to Marie Curie, but was also a turning point in her career. Henceforth, she was to devote all her energy to completing along the scientific work that she had undertaken. On May 13, 1906, she was appointed to the professorship that had been left vacant on her husband's death, becoming the first woman to teach at the Sorbonne. In 1911, she was awarded the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for the isolation of pure form of radium. During World War I, Marie Curie, with her help of her daughter, devoted herself to the development of the use of X radiography, including the mobile units, which came to be known as little Curies, used for the treatments of wounded soldiers. In 1918, the Radium Institutes, whose staff had joined, began to operate in earnest and become a center for nuclear physics and chemistry. Marie Curie, now at the highest points of her fame, and from 1922 a member of the Academy of Medicine, researched the chemistry of radioactive substance and the medical applications. In 1921, accompanied by her two daughters, Marie Curie made a triumphant journey to the United States to raise funds for research on radium. Women in the presented her with a grant of radium for her campaign. Marie also gave lectures in Brazil, Spain, and and in addition, he had the satisfaction of seeing the development of the Cruz Foundation in Paris and the inauguration in 1932 in Warsaw of the Radium Institute, where her sister Brownie became a director. One of Marie Curie's outstanding achievements was to have understood the need to accumulate instant radioactivity sources, not only into trace illnesses, but also to maintain an abundant supply for research. The existence in Paris at the Radium Institute of a stock of 1.5 grams of radium made a decisive contribution to the success of the experiments undertaken in the years around 1930. This work prepared the way for the discovery of Newton by Sir James, and above all for the discovery in 1934 by explorer to other results. Marie Curie died as a result of caused by exposure to radiation. She had often carried test tubes containing radioactive isotopes in her pockets, remarking on the pretty blue remarking on the pretty blue-green lights they give off. Her contribution to physics had been immersed not only in her own work, the importance of which had been demonstrated by her 2 Nobel Prizes, but because of her influence on subsequent generations of nuclear physics and chemists. Young children's sense of identity. A sense of self develops in young children by degrees. The process can be useful only be source of in terms of granular emergence of 2 somewhat separate features, the self as a subject and the self as an object. William James introduced the distinction in 1892, and the contemporaries of his, such as added to the developing debate. Ever since then, psychologists have continued building on the theory. According to James, a child's first step on the road to self-understanding can be seen as recognition that he or she exists. This is an aspect of the self that has labeled self as a subject and have gives various elements. This included an awareness of one's own agency, for example, one's power to act, and an awareness of one's distinctiveness from other people. These features gradually emerges as infants explore the world and interact with caregivers. Coley 1902 suggested that a sense of the self as subject was primarily concerned with being able to exercise power. He proposed that the earliest examples of this are in infants' attempts to control physics objects, such as toys of his or her own length. This is followed by attempts to affect the behavior of other people. For example, infants learn that when they cry or smell someone responds to them. Another powerful source of information for infants about the effects they can have on the world around them is provided when others mimic them. Many parents spend a lot of time, particularly in the earlier months, copying their infants' vocalizations and expressions. In addition, young children enjoy looking in their mirrors where the movements they can see are dependent upon their own movements. This is not to say that infants recognize the reflection as their own image. Later developments, however, Lewis and Briggs 1979 suggests that infants developing understanding that the movements they see in the mirror are contingent on their own leads to a growing awareness that they are distinct from other people. This is because they and only they can change the reflection in the mirror. This understanding that children gain of themselves as active agents continues to develop in their attempts to cooperate with others in play. Down 1988 and points out that it is in such day-to-day relationships and interactions that the child's understanding of his or herself emerges. In practical or investigations of the self as subjects in young children are, however, rather scarce because of difficulties of communication. Even if young infants can reflect on their experience, they certainly can also express these aspects of their self directly. Once children have acquired a certain level of self-awareness, they begin to place themselves in a whole series of categories which together play such an important part in defining them uniquely as themselves. This second step in the development for a sense of self is what James called the self as object. This has been seen by many to be the aspects of the self which is most influenced by social elements, since it is made up of social rules such as students, brother colleges, and characteristics which derive their meaning from comparison of interaction with other people, such as trustworthiness, shyness, sporting ability. Coley and other researchers suggested a close concern connection between a person's own understanding of their identity and other people's understanding of it. Coley believed that people build up their sense of identity from their reactions of others to them, and from the view they believe others have of them. He called their self as objects the looking glass self, since people came to see themselves as they are reflected in others. In 1934 went even further and saw the self and the social world as inextricably bound together. The self is essentially a social structure and is arise in social experience. It is impossible to conceive of a self arising outside of social experience. Lewis and Briggs argued that an important developmental milestone is reached when children become able to recognize themselves visually without the support of seeing intelligent movement. This regulation occurs around their second birthday. In one experiment, Lewis and Brooks began 1979 and debate some power on the nose of children who were playing in front of a mirror, and then observed how often they touched their nose. The physical psychologists reasoned that if the children knew what they usually looked like, they would be surprised by their unusual red mark and would start touching it. On the other hand, they found that children of 15 to 18 months are generally not able to recognize themselves unless other cues such as movements are present. Finally, perhaps the most graphic expressions of self-awareness in general can be seen in the displays of rank, which are most common for among 18 months to 3 years of age in the longitudinal study of groups of 3 or 4 children. Bronson in 1975 found that the intensity of their frustration and anger in their disagreements increased sharply between the age of 1 and 2 years. Often, the children's disagreements involved a struggle over a toy that none of them had played with before, or after the tug of war. The children seemed to be disputing ownership rather than wanting to play with it, although it may be less marked in other sections. Societies, the link between in the sense of self and of ownership is a notable feature of childhood in Western societies. The development of museums the conviction that historical radicals provided infallible testimony about their past is rooted in the 19th and earlier 20th centuries, when science was regarded as objective and value-free, as one writer observed, although it is now evidence that artifacts are as easily altered as chronicles. Public faith in their veracity endures. Tangible relic seems appropriate. Such convictions was until recently reflected in museum displays. Museums used to look, and some still do, much like storage rooms of objects packed together in showcases, good for scholars who wanted to study in the subtle differences in design, but not for the ordinary visitor to whom it all looks alike. Similarly, in the information accompanying the objects often made little sense to the lay visitor. The contents and the format of experimentation is dated back to a time when the museum was the exclusive domain of the scientific researcher. Recently, however, attitudes towards history and the way it should be presented have altered. The key word in heritage display is now experience. The more exciting, the better, and if possible, involving other senses. Good examples of this approach in the UK are the Center in New York, the National Museum of Photography, Film and Television in Bradford, and the Imperial War Museum in London. In the US, the trend emerged much earlier. William Sundberg has been a prototype for many heritage developments in other parts of the world. No one can predict where the process will end. On so-called heritage sites, the reenactment of historical events is increasingly popular, and commuters will soon provide virtual reality experiences, which will present visitors with a vivid image of the period of their choice, in which they themselves can act as if part of the historical environment. Such developments have been criticized as an intolerable vulgarization, but the success of many historical theme parks and similar locations suggests that the majority of the public does not share this opinion. In the related developments, the sharp distinction between museum and heritage sites on the one hand, and the theme parks on the other, is gradually evaporating. They already borrow ideas and concepts from one another. For example, museums have adapted storylines for exhibition. Insights have accepted theming as a relevant tool, and the theme parks are moving towards more authenticity and the research-based presentations. In Zoom, animals are no longer kept in cages, but in great spaces, either in the open air or in enormous greenhouses, such as the jungle and desert environments in Burgers zone in Holland. This particular trend is regarded as one of the major developments in the presentation of natural history in the 20th century. Theme parks are undergoing other changes too, as they try to present more serious social and cultural issues and move away from fantasy. This development is a response to market forces, and although museums and heritage sites have a special, rather distinct role to fulfill, they they are also operating in a very competitive environment where visitors make choices on how and where to spend their free time. Heritage and museum experts do not have to invent stories and recreate historical environment to attract their visitors. Their exercise are already in place. However, habits must be both based on artifacts and the facts as we know them and attractively presented. Those who are professionally engaged in the arts of interpreting in history are thus in a difficult position as they must steer a narrow course between the demands of evidence and attractiveness, especially given the increasing need in the heritage industry for income generating activities. It could be claimed that in order to make everything in heritage more real, historical accuracy must be increasingly altered. For example, it's depicted in the Indonesia Museum with Malay facial features because this responds to public perceptions. Similarly, in the Museum of Natural History in Washington, a man is shown making a dominant gesture to his wife. Such presentations tell us more about contemporary perceptions of the world than about our ancestors. This is one compensation. However, for the professionals who make these interpretations, if they did not provide the interpretation, visitors would do it for themselves based on their own ideas, misconceptions, and prejudice. And no matter how exacting the results, it would contain a lot more bias than the presentation provided by experts. Human bias is inevitable, but another source of bias is in the representation of history had to do with the sensory nature of the materials themselves. The simple fact is that not everything from history survives the historical process. Castles, places, and cathedrals have a longer lifespan than their dwellings of ordinary people. The same applies to their flourishing and other contents of the premises. In a town like Leiden in Holland, which in the 17th century was occupied by approximately the same number of inhabitants, and today people lived within the walled town and an area more than 5 times smaller than modern Leiden. Most of the houses, several families lived together in circumstances beyond our imagination. Yet in museums, fine period rooms give only an image of lifestyles of the upper class of their era. No wonder that people who stroll around its habitations are filled with nostalgia. The evidence in the museum indicates that life was so much better in the past. The legislation is induced by the bias in its representation in museum and heritage centuries.